Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2025 release, The Birthday. Although it's not actually shot in 2025, this is a 2004 film that's just finally getting released into 2025. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this is a Shudder exclusive. It's coming to Shudder on Friday, February 21st. So this is a no spoiler review. This is an interesting one. I will tell you off the bat, overall, I did enjoy it, but there's some things I really liked. There's some things I really didn't like. So, obviously, in a no spoiler way, I'll get into that here. This one's directed by Eugenio Mira, who did Agnosia and Grand Piano. Written by Mira as well as Mikel Alvarino, who did A Private Affair. This is a Spanish production. It's from Spain, but it's entirely in English. All the actors entirely in English. There are absolutely no subtitles. So even though it's a Spanish production, you can rest assured, all you people who hate subtitles, you don't have to read any subtitles. The film was done in 2004, but didn't release in the US until 2023 at festivals. So the backstory on this one is that Corey Feldman stars in this film. And Jordan Peele apparently is a big Corey Feldman fan. Corey Feldman at one point had him over to his house, showed him this film, and Jordan Peele loved it and was like, wow, why didn't this end up getting a release in the United States? And then started advocating for it and getting it on some festival circuits. So that's why it was done so long ago, but it's actually finally getting a US release now. And I think one of the things, or the main thing probably, that Jordan Peele was latching onto with this film was the performance of Corey Feldman in this film. That's my favorite thing about this movie. If you are a Corey Feldman fan, this is a must-see for you, I think, because he has a very interesting, quirky character he plays. And that just leads me right into the synopsis, basically, of this is about Norman Forrester, played by Corey Feldman, who is going to a party. Well, it's kind of like a family get-together after a funeral for his girlfriend. Or friend who he wants to be his girlfriend, basically. He wants to tell her that he loves her, and it's tough because you'll see he's a very kind of fast-talking, meek, won't stand up for yourself type of person. A little bit dorky as well, and he's just trying to get the feelings out, but it's a hard time. So he goes to this party, or he's on his way to this party, and he also finds out that there's another party going on with some other people that he knows, and they kind of pull him into that. So he's kind of like bouncing between these two parties, and then there's something else that's going on. Obviously, this is a horror film, so there is a horror element that comes in at some point, albeit pretty late, in my opinion. I thought it should have been introduced a lot earlier, but is what it is. So yeah, it's just basically about his character going through all these situations. It feels a lot like the movie Four Rooms in a sense, because it all takes place in this one building in Baltimore, Maryland, apparently, which is not too far from where I live. So I thought that was cool. But anyway, that's all I'm going to give you synopsis-wise. Again, I think for me personally, what is the best about this is Corey Feldman's performance. Very interesting, very fun. Interesting character in the first place, but what Feldman does with it, quite like. Initially, you're caught off guard by the character that Corey Feldman is playing until it starts to really work. At first, you're like, this is a weird character, this seems a little too much maybe, but then you start to settle into that character and get into this feeling of, okay, I'm getting more of a sense of who this is supposed to be, why they act like this. It's not seeming as ridiculous, over the top, or as goofy as I'm thinking. And then you also start to feel what the whole point of the film is. Like, it's supposed to have this kind of quirky, kind of humorous feel to it the entire way through, a little bit into the absurd, basically, and it's one of those types of films. Like I said, think like Four Rooms, if you've ever seen Four Rooms, which I think is really good. Pretty early on, it has a very quirky adventure feel to it. It literally is about following Norman Forrester's character just on this kind of adventure that I wouldn't say he goes on, he gets sucked into. He gets like pushed along into, because a lot of these things he's just not making his own choices. It's people forcing him in directions and telling him what to do, and it's interesting from that standpoint. So if you like those types of like kind of slowly paced, films where you're just mainly experiencing a lot of dialogue with the characters, albeit weird and quirky and interesting dialogue, with a bunch of weird and quirky, interesting characters and some weird premises, and all of it played to be a little bit absurdist, a little bit humorous, then I think you're going to end up liking this. There is a lot of light situational humor, yes, like I was kind of talking about. Things start getting a lot more interesting about an hour in. Now, this is one of the big problems for me personally, is it's kind of interesting up until that point. I do feel like that whole, like, quirky humor, like, just feel this ambiance and this fun, light nature of the film thing. It only works to a certain point, and then it starts to get really stale, in my opinion, because you need to introduce something else. Like, where's the horror element? Where's the real intrigue here? And that doesn't hit until about an hour into the film. Now, this is a 2-hour film almost. I think it's like an hour and 59 minutes with credits, but it doesn't need to be. Like, it shouldn't be. This is a bloated film, a very bloated film. But on the other hand, that means you get a lot more of this Corey Feldman performance. So if you're really enjoying this Corey Feldman performance, maybe 2 hours is great for you. That's the thing. You got to make your mind up. But I just feel like for what story is there, it's just stretched. I don't think they were trying to hit 2 hours. I just think they're very long-winded, basically, as filmmakers. That's my opinion. Unfortunately, the score is very ridiculous. And I understand the choice for it, and you also need to remember this was done in 2004, so scores were more over the top at that point, so like I kind of give it a little bit of a pass, but it is a very ridiculous over the top score that is just screaming at you all the time. One of the other reasons for that being that the characters are in like ballrooms where live bands are playing. So I do think they could have brought the volume on that down more, because there are moments where it was a little bit hard to hear what characters were saying. So I would have liked that to be brought down, but you know, it was 2004. So yeah. It's hard to know what's going to happen with the main character ultimately, because it seems like everyone is telling him what to do. It's literally one of these things where you feel like he's being like pushed and pulled in all these different directions. He has a really hard time making up his own mind, sticking up for himself and saying, hey, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. So that creates a situation where you're just like, I literally don't know where this is going to go. Like, it's literally like, what path is he going to be pushed into next? So from moment to moment, you really don't know where it's headed. They do a good job of making the film feel like it could be comprised of a lot of very long takes, which I think is an interesting thing, especially in the very beginning. They have what could have been one very long take where you're just kind of following Norman Forrester, and he's just going through, you know, going from here to there, and it gives it more of this kind of continuous, interesting feel to it, like you're not missing a single moment of what is going on this night for this individual. So I do like that aspect of it. It's shot well, and it feels overall very polished, I will say. So, you know, from a visual standpoint, doing well. Again, feels like 4 rooms. It feels well paced and poorly paced at the same time, which I need to clarify on that. Things are always happening, and the dialogue has energy, but the story feels really slow and repetitive. So it's like things are happening, and they're like, this is exciting, like we're doing this, and you know, there's all this dialogue flying at you, and it is kind of interesting, and you're getting all these new characters being introduced, and there's always something going on, but the overall story isn't really progressing much, and what story you have keeps getting repeated a lot. So that's kind of what I mean by, like, it feels like it has good and bad pacing at the same time. So it's kind of weird in that sense, but, you know. There isn't any good gore in this. There are no good practical effects in this, which is very much a letdown for me personally. There is some blood in it, but there's no really good gore. There's no good practical effects, unfortunately. I don't understand why. I would like them to have kind of gone for it more in the horror element. In the end, like, it is horror, but it's very light. I'll just put it there. It's very light horror. And the ending is just okay-ish. I wasn't huge on the ending. It was fine. Again, it was very much too drawn out. But overall, I did like the film. So out of 5 stars, half stars, and play, I'm going to give it a decent enough 3-star rating. So again, if you're a Corey Feldman fan, this is a must for you, I would say, especially since it's just finally getting released in the US. But I would love to hear other people's opinions on this. Go ahead and put it down in the comments. Also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. That is your best way to show your support for what I'm doing here. Link in the description for memberships if you're interested in signing up for those. You do get perks with the channel each month if you sign up for memberships, and it's very low dollar amount. I think it's $1.99 and $1.99 and $2.99 for the different tiers, and you can see what you get. Notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos, and thumbs up on the video if you want to help with that YouTube algorithm. But regardless, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep it brutal.